Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cracking open some source material about XAI, that's XAI. It's a project focused squarely on, well, what feels like a really big goal for a lot of people in crypto, bringing traditional gamers.
Yeah, the ones who, already spend hours playing.
Exactly, those billions of people and bringing them into Web3 gaming. So our mission today is to really dig into these documents, figure out what XAI is, what problems they're tackling, and how it all works, especially if you're maybe a gamer yourself or just curious about blockchain finally hitting the mainstream. And straight off the bat, one thing that jumps out from the sources is XAI being called the first layer 3 chain just for gaming, built in the Arbitrum ecosystem.
Yeah, and that layer 3 for gaming bit is, I think, really important. It signals they're not just building general tech. It's specific.
Yeah.
They're aiming right at those friction points that seem to be holding back gamers from jumping into Web3.
Okay, so let's start there. The big picture. What's the fundamental, the core problem XAI is trying to solve, according to these sources?
Right. The main goal, as the material lays it out, is enabling real economies and open trade within games. But the really big ambition, they're talking about billions of traditional gamers.
Billions.
Yeah. And the promise is that these gamers can actually own and trade their in-game items, not just within one game's walls, but maybe across games or, sell them for actual value. And here's the kicker. They want to do this without making gamers directly, mess around with crypto wallets.
Whoa, hold on. No wallets for billions of users. That sounds huge, like tackling the biggest complaint. Right?
Exactly. I mean, think about it from a regular gamer's view. You just want to play, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly someone's telling you, okay, download this wallet, write down these 12 words, don't lose them, understand gas. It's totally different from just, buying a skin with your credit card.
Totally different.
The sources really hammer this point that complexity is just a massive wall for most people.
It's like asking someone who just bought a new car to first learn how the internal combustion engine works before they can drive it off the lot.
Right. So the idea is true ownership, real trade, but make the underlying tech kind of invisible. So besides the wallets, what other big problems in blockchain gaming do these sources say XAI is trying to fix?
Okay, yeah. What else?
Well, documents point to a few key bottlenecks that have held back Web3 gaming. First up is scalability.
Right. Always a big one.
Yeah. Existing blockchains, even some layer 2s, they can really struggle with the sheer number of fast, small transactions that a super popular game would generate. Think about every item pickup, every little quest completion, every battle move.
It adds up fast.
It does. So XAI's answer is this layer 3 setup. They claim it's designed specifically to scale up to potentially hundreds of millions of users without giving up the cool blockchain stuff like interoperability between games or security.
So like a dedicated fast lane just for gaming traffic. Okay. What about costs? Transaction fees, gas fees?
Yeah.
That's another common pain point.
Definitely. Gas fees. The sources are pretty explicit here. XAI aims to basically eliminate gas fees for the players entirely.
Eliminate them. How?
They use something called an innovative gas subsidy contract. Look, for a traditional gamer, paying even a tiny fee every time you equip a sword or open a chest feels weird, right? It's not how games normally work.
Yeah, completely alien.
So by absorbing that cost, making those actions feel free, like they are in, say, World of Warcraft or Fortnite, it makes everything low friction, more like the games people are used to.
That frictionless feel sounds absolutely critical if you want mass adoption.
Yeah.
Okay, so simplifying wallets, killing gas fees.
Yeah.
Any other core problems they're built for?
Yeah, stability. That's super important for games. You can't have the network lagging or going down during a boss fight.
Oh, God, no. Rage quit territory.
Exactly. So the sources mentioned XAI uses Arbitrum's AnyTrust technology, plus they've optimized how smart contracts run. The goal is a reliable, stable network environment. AnyTrust is interesting because it keeps security high but costs low. Sort of the best of both worlds for gaming.
Okay, so built for scale, free for players, hides the wallet complexity, and aims to be stable. Got it. How did they, technically build this layer 3? What are the nuts and bolts described in the sources?
So the foundation, like we said, is it's an Arbitrum orbit chain. Orbit lets projects spin up their own dedicated layer 3s on top of Arbitrum's layer 2. But the key detail from the sources is that XAI is getting direct technical support from off-chain labs.
The Arbitrum creators.
Yeah, the actual team that build Arbitrum. That's apparently not standard for every orbit chain. And it suggests, a pretty tight collaboration on the engineering side.
Having the architects help build your extension, basically. That sounds like a big advantage. You mentioned nodes earlier, too, these Sentry nodes. What's their job in this whole setup?
Ah, the Sentry nodes. They're quite interesting. The source describes them as observation nodes. Their main job isn't heavy computation, like validating everything. Instead, they just watch the SI roll-up protocol. Yeah, they monitor the blocks being proposed. If they spot one that looks wrong, like potentially fraudulent or just incorrect based on the rules, they raise an alarm. It's specifically designed to solve something called the verifier's dilemma.
The verifier's dilemma.
Yeah.
Okay, is that like, it's good if someone checks the work, but maybe I don't want to do all the hard checking myself if I don't have to.
That's pretty much it. Sentry nodes offer an efficient way to keep the chain secure. They incentivize people to watch and flag problems, but without needing every single participant to run like a supercomputer.
Gotcha. So it's built on Arbitrum, special support,
Yeah.
and these Sentry nodes act like watchdogs. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's talk tokens. Every blockchain needs one, right?
Sure.
What's the XAI token? What does it do?
Right, so XAI is the native gas token for the network. But remember, the sources say players aren't the ones directly paying gas fees with it.
Right, the subsidy thing.
Exactly. But you can take your XAI token, and the term they use is redeem or convert them into something called SXAI. That's escrowed XAI. And this SXAI is what you actually stake to get different benefits in the ecosystem.
Okay, is XAI. And what kind of benefits do you get for staking that?
The documents lay out three main things. First, there's a yield account. If you stake SAI there, especially if you're running one of those Sentry nodes, you get more SXAI yield, basically earning more tokens.
Okay, earn more. Makes sense.
Second, there's a culture account. Staking SXAI here gives you access to things like special events, maybe exclusive NFTs related to the games on Z, stuff that gamers would actually, care about.
Perks.
And third, the governance account. Staking here gives you voting rights. You can participate in proposals about how the project's treasury, managed by the DAO or foundation, is spent.
So, stake for yield, stake for gamer perks, or stake for a voice in the project. Seems like they covered the main angles for community engagement. The sources also gave a snapshot of the tokenomics from back in early January 2024, right?
They did. Looking at that data from Jan 3rd, 2024, max supply for XAI is set at 2.5 billion. The initial circulating supply when it listed was planned around 277 million, which is roughly 11% of the total.
Okay.
And an interesting note, gas fees that are spent on the network, presumably by the subsidizer contract or other system operations, are burned.
Oh, so deflationary pressure.
Potentially, yeah. Though the sources don't really quantify how significant that burn would be compared to the total supply, they also briefly mention the allocation, big chunks going to the nodes, the team, early investors, the usual suspects.
And they raised money beforehand.
Yep, about $10 million across 3 funding rounds, according to the source. Prices mentioned were 0.010, 0.032 cents, and 0.355 Tor Oken in those rounds. Gives you a sense of the early valuation and structure.
Okay, good context. Let's shift gears from the tech and token. What about actual usage? Did the sources mention any traction or activity Shy had seen by early 2024?
Yeah, they highlighted some pretty interesting early metrics, mostly from the testnet phase. They talked about seeing over 4 million daily transactions at its peak.
Wow, daily.
Yeah, and over 150 million total transactions during testing, with nearly 500,000 wallets connected. So it suggests people were really kicking the tires on the network infrastructure.
Those are pretty solid numbers for a testnet. Implies the capacity might be there. What about the Sentry nodes we talked about? Any data on those?
That was presented as a big success. The sources state they raised over $20 million just from selling the Sentry node keys, and that was in about 3 weeks. Over 30,000 keys sold, and more than 5,000 active nodes running at that time.
Okay, so significant buy-in from people wanting to row the infrastructure. That's important.
Definitely shows early community belief, or at least interest, in participating on the supply side.
Right, but infrastructure is one thing.
Right.
What about the games? That's what players care about. Are there actual games mentioned that are building on Xi?
Absolutely. The sources specifically call out a few. There's one called Final Form. It's from a developer named Xpopulous, described as a deck builder auto-battler game with roguelite elements. Launch was targeted for April 2024.
Okay, deck builder auto battler.
And that same developer, Xpopulous, is also making Lamiverse. This one sounds different, more action-focused, with a destructible world and hovercar combat. That was aimed for Q4 2024.
Interesting. 2 different genres from one studio. Any others mentioned?
Yep, Tarochi. This one's described as an on-chain RPG. Think quests, catching monsters, but all happening on the blockchain. They even provided some early data for it. 17,000 battles fought, 2,500 unique players in its first month, and it generated over 100,000 transactions.
Wow, okay, actual usage stats.
And one more, Web3 Warriors, an on-chain survival game, escaping dungeons, fighting enemies. The data points shared for this one were things like 4,000 total hours played, an average session time of 30 minutes, and a 40% day one retention rate.
That retention number, 40%, that's pretty solid for any game, let alone an early Web3 one.
Yeah, that definitely stands out as a positive signal for game stickiness.
So these examples help make it real. It's not just abstract tech. There were actual games starting to see some player engagement. Looking forward from when these sources were written, what did the roadmap look like and who were the key partners?
Okay, roadmap. They listed stuff completed in late 2023, like an Odyssey event and the Sentry node launch we discussed. Then for 2024, Q1 looked really busy. It included the mainnet launch itself, the TGE token generation event, basically the token launch and listing on exchanges, enabling that XAI staking, and getting those first games like Tarochi and Web3 Warriors deployed.
Sounds like a foundational quarter. What about later in 2024?
Q2 had plans for launching Final Form, that deck builder, and also onboarding the first wave of games from a key partner, the Media Indie Exchange. They call it Eminix.
Mixed. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Mimix seems pretty important. Then Q3 had Lamiverse scheduled, plus even more games from Mix coming online. It really points to them trying to build a pipeline, get a flow of new games onto the platform.
Okay, so MSX is about bringing in more games. Sounds crucial. Who else was mentioned as key partners, business or commercial ones? What roles do they play?
The partner list covers a lot of ground. Obviously, off-chain labs for the deep tech collaboration on the chain itself. Then Team Secret, the esports org, is listed for game distribution, leveraging their audience, presumably.
Makes sense.
The Media Indie Exchange, MIX, like we said, is huge for sourcing indie games. The source mentions a pipeline of over 100 titles through them, plus help with distribution. Then there's Rug Radio, partnered for promotion and getting the word out.
Okay, so tech build, game sourcing, marketing.
Yeah.
What about the core Web3 infrastructure needed on Jai? Like trading, NFTs.
Cover 2, Camelot, a well-known DX on Arbitrum, is deploying on Jai to provide trading. Rarible is setting up an NFT marketplace, absolutely essential if you're talking about trading those in-game items.
Right, gotta have a place to trade them.
Then ThirdWeb is deploying their developer toolkit, which should make it easier for game devs to build on Zai and onboard their users smoothly. And finally, Layer 0 is deploying their interoperability protocol. That's key if items or activities on Zai ever need to connect with other blockchains.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive ecosystem of partners. Covers the chain tech, the games, the trading, the dev tools, the cross-chain stuff. Okay, almost there. The sources also gave a quick snapshot of the community size around that early Jan 2024 timeframe.
Just quick numbers, yeah. It listed about 87,000 followers on Twitter, 77,000 members in their Discord, and 16,000 in Telegram. Gives you a rough sense of the audience they'd built leading up to the mainnet launch.
Okay, so we've covered a ton from these sources. The core mission, get traditional gamers into Web3. The problems, scale, fees, wallets, stability. The solution, Layer 3 on Arbitrum, Sentry nodes, gas subsidies, wallet abstraction. The token, XAI and SXAI for yield, culture, governance, early traction, testnet numbers, node fails, real games, Final Form, Lamiverse, Tarochi, Web3 Warriors, and the roadmap and partners building out the ecosystem. Let's circle back now, bring it home for you, the listener. Why should a traditional gamer or someone just curious about Web3 really pay attention to this specific approach from Z?
Well, I think this material makes a really strong argument that those specific hurdles, paying weird fees for every little thing and having to deal with complicated crypto wallets, are maybe the biggest turnoffs for mainstream gamers.
Yeah, seems plausible.
And what's interesting, what's maybe different here is how directly Zai tries to just remove both of them for the user, handling wallets behind the scenes, paying the gas for them. It's like they're saying, look, just come play the games, own your cool stuff. You don't actually need to become a blockchain expert.
Yeah.
It's a very clear strategy.
Right.
Make the experience feel as familiar as possible while kind of sneaking in the benefits of real digital ownership and open economies underneath.
It really sounds like they're putting that user experience absolutely front and center, aiming to give you the Web3 good stuff without making you do the Web3 homework.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. It's basically a bet that this level of abstraction, hiding the complexity, is the real key to getting mass adoption in gaming.
So summing it all up, this deep dive into the source material really shows Jai making a focused play. They're tackling those key barriers, fees, wallets, scale head-on to bring traditional gamers into Web3. They're using specialized Layer 3 tech on Arbitrum, clever ideas like Sentry nodes and gas subsidies, and they had an ecosystem of games and significant partners lined up based on these early 2024 documents.
Yeah, what really stands out is just how clearly they identified their target problem gamer onboarding friction and how specifically they engineered solutions like the gas subsidy and the wallet abstraction to address that problem.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with one final thought for you to consider, based on everything we've unpacked from these sources. Given Jai's stated goal of scaling to potentially hundreds of millions of users, and their very pointed focus on solving these specific friction points, getting rid of gas fees for the player and hiding wallet complexity, how truly transformative could removing just those two things be? Not just for Web3 gaming, but maybe for bringing blockchain benefits to any mainstream app where complexity is currently stopping regular people from jumping in. Something to think about as you watch this space evolve.